The webinar will be starting. The webinar will be starting shortly. Good day. My name is Sharon Roberson. I'm president and CEO of YWCA Nashville and Middle Tennessee. And welcome to the YWCA's Stand Against Injustice. We have these sessions to put out or really discuss valid issues within the Nashville community. And today we have a discussion with our experts of one of the most, I guess, contentious yet really, really important issues. And this is gun violence. And we've always known that it really takes women in our community to step into these difficult spaces fearlessly in order to move the conversation forward. As always with the YW, we seek to invite you to all of our conversations and not to indict you. But we're hoping when we finish this conversation today, you will have some nuggets of knowledge that you may not have had before about ways that we can come together as a community to make sure that everyone is safe in Nashville and Middle Tennessee. This is a special Women's History Month webinar, and hopefully you will see the importance of women in this, what can be a difficult space. One thing about Nashville is although we have the positivity of powerful women in our community, this week was very difficult for this Nashville community. Wednesday, March the 27th, marked the one-day anniversary of the Covenant School shooting. 6 precious lives were lost to gun violence. This shook not only this community, it shook the nation as a whole. Many people sprung into action. Some of those that have been activists in this space reinforced their commitment to this cause. We are seeking to move the community forward to have common sense gun regulation so that no more lives have to be lost, such as those in the Covenant shooting. 1 year later, we're gathering everyone together, having this conversation, getting on the front line. And it's timely because if now, when? I want to thank the Nissan Foundation, Alliance Bernstein, and the Harnish Foundation, because we have those corporations and foundations stepping up to help fund this mission. And this is the critical work of the YWCA. Our mission is eliminating racism, empowering women, promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. And what better dignity and justice is to be free of gun violence. So let's get started. I'm excited about our panel. They are stellar. They are important women in their own, powerful women in their own right. I want to ask them to introduce themselves and really to tell us how they came into this space of being a frontline activist against gun violence. I'll start with my friend Claudia Huskey.
Well, as I have often reminded Sharon, I am Claudia Huskey. In my day job, I'm executive director of Voices for a Safer Tennessee. But on my side hustle, I am president of the Sharon Roberson Fan Club and a huge, just very grateful for all of the work they all do at the YWCA, you absolutely save lives, and our community is better for you. I came into this work not because it was something that I was looking to do. I think that the Covenant school shooting impacted me in a way that was not unlike everybody in Nashville. I think we can all remember exactly where we were just a little over a year ago today. I have worked in advocacy and politics for the last 20 years. I managed former Mayor Megan Barry's campaign and worked in her administration as the first female mayor of Nashville. And when she left office, I went to work at University School of Nashville. So working in another independent school, not very far from Covenant, when I started to receive text messages about, they just heard that there might be an active school shooting and people wanted to check on me to make sure it wasn't me. And in the days following, I gathered with a group of women and a few men. We had some great grandpas in the room. And we just thought, what can we do over the next few weeks as the legislative session was ending? What can we do? And the idea was actually to form a linking arms for change. And that event was one of the genesis for how Voices for a Safer Tennessee was formed. And we can talk about that a little bit more later, but it definitely feels like something that I've been called to do, and I am proud to partner with fantastic organizations like Moms Demand Action and build upon the work that Linda has been doing for many years at the Capitol. And I'm just, again, grateful for her. And I will transition it back to Sharon, who may transition it to her.
And Linda, tell us about how you fit into this space.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Sharon and YWCA, for this opportunity. I've been a volunteer in this field since the couple of days after the Sandy Hook shooting, which was about 11 and a half years ago now. Before that, we had gun violence in our family. We had an aunt and uncle who died in a murder-suicide with a gun that we did not know my uncle had. We also had a family friend who was shot in the head in the Unitarian Church shooting. I forget the year, I'm going to say about 12 years ago. She was at a children's production of Annie. I know we all remember Annie at the Unitarian Church there in Knoxville. And a man came in because he wanted to kill some liberals, some folks who accepted gays, those kinds of folks. And he did kill 2 people, and he shot 8 more. My friend survived. But what she says is that the worst part of it was that when they took her out and onto the grass with her little boys, that she bled on them, and that moms aren't supposed to bleed on their children, neither are the dads. It was very, very difficult, but she is okay. And her boys are now in college and they're doing fine. Sandy Hook was a terrible, terrible thing that affected me because I had been a teacher. I had taught in a classroom with a small bathroom, and I know how small they are. And I know that at Sandy Hook, the teacher crammed 14 first graders into the bathroom before they were shot dead with no place to fall. So a couple of days after Sandy Hook, our founder, Shannon Watts, got online and tried to find a grassroots organization that she could get involved with. And of course, there wasn't one. So as women often do, she started one. She's not our executive director anymore, but she was for 10 years. And yes, I organize the state of Tennessee for moms and do legislative work now.
Right. And another panelist is having technical difficulties, but she will be joining us, and her name is Clemmie Greenlee. I met Clemmie a number of years ago, and she has a group, Nashville Peacemakers. And her group, oh, here comes Clemmie. I'm just introducing you, Clemmie. She really brings together moms who have lost children to gun violence. She's been out here a long time. I truly admire her body of work. And Clemmie, we're letting you introduce yourself and talk very briefly about how you fit into this space as an activist against gun violence.
Okay, first of all, let me apologize. I don't know what's going on with my computer. But anyway, my name is Clemmie Greenlee, founder of Mothers Over Murder, mother of a murdered son. So that makes it personally, my personal involvement in this. And coming to the streets, writing moms who have lost their kids to violence through the gun, and finding out how we can find justice and healing.
All right, thank you. We're going to start off now because at the heart of this activism is our legislative work. Because frankly, Tennessee has some very, very loose, to put it bluntly, gun regulation. We seem to be going in the wrong direction, in fact. But open up with the state of gun legislation in Tennessee right now. I'll start with you, Claudia. Give us an overview kind of where we are and what might happen. And is there any chance that we might get legislative relief?
Absolutely. Thank you, Sharon. You are right. In meetings that we have had, it has been described to me that our Second Amendment infrastructure is very strong, which is certainly one way of phrasing it here in Tennessee. But you're right. We have come off of a special session on firearms and public safety, in which many of us on the screen and probably, out in the audience were really frustrated that more was not accomplished during that special session. But I do think that conversations started last summer that have continued into this legislative session. So we are seeing more Republican-sponsored and bipartisan legislation on things that would restrict access to firearms. There is one bill called Jillian's Law that not only has it been advancing through the legislature, it's HB 1640, SB 1769, but that is honoring Jillian Ludwig, the Belmont student who was shot by a stray bullet near Belmont's campus while out for a run. And it would, if you have been deemed mentally incompetent to stand trial, it would make you a prohibited purchaser, which would be one of those things that you might have thought would already be existing law, but it was not. So again, bipartisan support moving. It has a fiscal note that we are excited Governor Lee included in his budget amendment. So there is funding behind it. And this bill also has a process for involuntary committal for those found incompetent who also pose a danger to themselves or a risk to the community, which even when we have been in other counties having meetings, district attorneys have told us that it is difficult to, if you have been declared mentally incompetent to stand trial, that doesn't necessarily mean that you will go into services. So this bill also creates a better path for those folks to receive additional support. So that's just one piece of legislation. There are several others, which I would be happy to talk about, but we are seeing more legislation moving forward. Additionally, some of the bills that would actually make things less safe in Tennessee are having a harder time advancing through committees. And I think that that is because there is so much great work being done, again, by Moms Demand Action, Voices for a Safer Tennessee, Rise and Shine, others, YWCA, people who are awake, Turk, different organizations that are up there having these conversations with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle and expressing. And I think they are also hearing more from their constituents. People are reaching out from rural districts to say, we don't want to arm teachers in schools. We don't want there to be more capacity for firearms on our streets. So we are seeing some progress, slow, and we recognize that that's frustrating, but it's there.
All right, thank you, Claudia. And Linda, let's go to you because the governor did sponsor himself legislation that was really a movement in the right direction. Talk about what's happened legislatively. What have you seen?
Well, I call this this is one of the worst General Assemblies I've ever worked with. They are a real do-nothing bunch. And they seem to use their abilities not only to avoid gun bills that would really save a lot of lives, but also do everything they can to trip us up and wear us down. And we are not going to be worn down. We sit there for hours sometimes waiting to testify on something that we were told we would get to testify on, and somehow it never happens, or often doesn't happen. The extreme risk bill that you mentioned, Sharon, the governor caved on that in August. We do have an extreme risk or red flag bill up next week on the 2nd. The Civil Justice Subcommittee is doing what I call a gruesome gun calendar. They call it a gun calendar, and I think it's gruesome to push all these bills in one sitting, but that's what they do. And the ERPO bill of Representative Freeman is one of those that's up. Another bill that would arm teachers is up, but it is struggling, and that is good news. That was one of our priorities, was to stop the expansion of guns in schools in our state. And so far we're holding our own, but it's not over yet. They want to they want to fool with our signage bill. We have a law that says if you don't want guns in your house or your church or your hospital or your YWCA building, you can post it, no firearms allowed. They want to say that if you have a permit, it's okay to come on in a posted building because you have a permit. We think that's not okay. We think that private property owners should be able to decide who comes in, or that if they don't want guns inside, especially in hospitals, then they should not be allowed to come in. One of the bills is in big trouble, but another one is up on Tuesday. So they're still working on that. I guess the worst thing on Tuesday would allow attorneys to carry guns in the courtroom because, people don't ever get upset in the courtroom. And how, there we would have people, as long as you kept your gun concealed. So we're going to be speaking out against that one. And our safe storage bill it failed in Senate last week. This was the bill that would allow certain cities with like 99,000 people or more to require safe gun storage in your car, separate from the state doesn't have a law requiring safe storage of guns in cars. So this bill would have allowed certain cities to carve out and require safe storage. Well, they didn't like that either. There's another one coming up this week. I don't expect it to do very well. And we don't expect our ERPO bill to pass, but we want it to have a hearing because it's so popular with the public. And we hope to get some of its opponents on record saying that they don't think it's a good idea to separate someone who's at risk for self-harm or harming others from their firearms.
Yeah.
So, sorry, the news is bad.
Oh, well, this is that's just the work. Sometimes you have to figure out what the work is to move it forward and make change. Now, Clemmie, you've lost a child to gun violence, and you're with mothers who, up close and personal, who have all lost children to gun violence. Tell me something about why you think it's so difficult for legislators to make the change.
Well, because neither one of their kids have been shot or murdered yet, number one. After me going up there, being up there to the legislation since October, fighting with the empathy bill that I was helping Raphael with, I saw a lot and heard a lot and broke my heart and my spirit. And I don't see nobody getting anywhere with those people up there. And that's what I have to call them, those people. Those are heartless people fighting this gun laws and keep getting hammered in your face about no, we don't want to hear it. No, we're not going to pass the bill. I asked Raphael and the Dream Court that I was up there with the bill on helping mothers get the certifications certificate to be awarded money when a child is murdered, and found out that they didn't care about helping anybody with funerals. that Saxon guy just pretty much told me in my face, we don't care. And when I saw that and saw the heartless of them begging and crying, I mean, actually begging and crying to these people. I mean, even the covenant moms, Linda and them, I done followed them. I can't do this. I'll go to jail because I know how my heart is and I know how my mouth is. So when I left out of there, I said I would never be back. Take me back to the streets and take me back to the community, because now my constituents are waiting to get 17 and 18 years old to get a gun because they don't have to have a permit. And then when they came up and said that they're going to pass the law for guns to be already in courtrooms, and then they want them in the teachers' room, you done already bought them in the bars. That's why we're having the bars shooting. Then we better be looking at some scary stuff. As Linda said, they sit up there days and days, hours and hours. And at the end of the day, these people still put the hammer on your face. They still put your heart in a crushed mold, and they don't care. So I'd rather stay here where I'm at with my moms and love on them and help them get through what they can to make it to the next day without telling them everything that's going on at that legislation building. After I saw this morning that they really took over TSU, there's nothing else to talk about. And I'm not going to waste the rest of my years or my voice up there with them, because that's all it is. It's a waste. Rah, 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 to each their own. But let me stay out here in the community. You can look people in the eye that's pouring their heart out about their loved one and their constituents that's being murdered, being locked up, being mentally institutionalized, even with the Julian law. I was okay with that, but I was also angry with that, because she ain't the only one that been murdered by people that have been mentally institutionalized. But it took her as a Caucasian white woman, just let me say how I speak, for that law to come. And so is that gonna rectify everybody? Because what about the white people that come around and kill all the black people and play institutionalized that still don't get a day or a dollar? So until you come to me with the real deal, you don't need to come to me at all. That's mean I'm not going back up there. That's mean I'm not doing no more Zoom, no more podcasts, because this just don't make sense. It really don't. And
all right, Clemmie. Well, we'll work on you a little bit, because
I'm just sorry, y'all.
You're a voice that needs to be heard. So we're going to work on that a little bit. I'm going to talk to you.
They don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to hear me.
They might want to hear you. You never know. There may be someone there that may have to talk to a mother who's lost their child like you have to gun violence. Okay, Claudia, on Wednesday, Nashville came together, as we said, in honor of the Covenant shootings. And there was it showed great honor to the families, for individuals to link arms in solidarity and to work against gun violence and reform. Tell me something about that event, so in case there are some in the community that may not have understood what happened.
Sure. Well, thank you, Sharon. And Clemmie, let me just again say, I am unbelievably sorry for your loss. And we were very intentional, even though we did the event on the anniversary of the Covenant shooting. We wanted to be very clear that it was about the nearly 1,300 Tennesseans who have lost their lives to preventable firearm tragedies over the last year. And that is very important, because we fully recognize that communities of color are disproportionately affected in this work, and we absolutely need to continue to raise awareness with legislators and our general community to those facts. Linking Arms for Change was a beautiful and hopeful and healing demonstration along over 3 miles from Centennial Park and Monroe Carroll Vanderbilt Children's Hospital to the Capitol. And the initial idea behind it was to remove barriers, because as Clemmie's experienced and others, going to the legislature can be hard, and there are barriers in place that can make it feel like a really intimidating process. And we wanted to be able to have people show their voice in a way that could feel good and healing, but also make it easy. Bring it to their office door, bring it to their school door, bring it to their park, and have it feel impactful. When we did it last year, over 10,000 people participated. And when we talked about doing it again this year, and we're very in close touch with Covenant School and the families to make sure that they felt like it was an appropriate way to honor what had happened, we didn't know if people would turn out again, if we kind of captured lightning in a bottle the first time, and what if no one showed up? And we had over nearly 12,000 people, I think like 11,600 people that we can really account for, but then also folks in Chattanooga and Memphis and other communities across our state also had linking arms in their communities, just to show that we have to continue to organize within Middle Tennessee, but really get out in these rural counties, because that is where the conversations need to shift. I think folks here really understand the impact of these laws, but once you drive 30 minutes in any direction, Linda, and I'm sure Clemmie will tell you, conversations are a lot different. So we are grateful that our community turned out again in such strong numbers, but we are hopeful that it will continue to inspire conversations in Williamson County and Putnam County and Jackson County, all across the state, so we can really start to have legislators hear from their constituents, because that is how their hearts and minds are going to change on these issues.
Agreed. Now, Linda, on February 27th, 100 different groups from across the state gathered, including Clemmie's organization, for a day on the Hill. And it was important to see this coalition. And I always say, when you look at the civil rights pictures from the 50s and 60s, you see many different kinds of individuals. And I truly believe that if we have change, we're going to have various voices, unique voices, because you never know who might hit a person's heart. Linda, talk a little bit about the importance of having the different organizations gathered together in coalition for this fight.
Sure. Well, we were looking ahead to August and November elections, because we really, really, really need to change some people out at the General Assembly who are, just as Clemmie described, they're hard-hearted, and they're married to they're addicts to their power and money, is all I can say. And so the moms in the red shirts can't be the only people pushing for this, or voices, or a few other groups. We need everyone together so that we can go together and vote and get the better people in office. So yes, we had a wonderful coalition. We had more diversity than we've ever had, and that was a wonderful thing to see. The faith community came out really strong. We had we had gun violence interrupters from Memphis. We had Rafia from Mothers Over Murder, was just terrific, Clemmie, at the press conference. We had more teenagers than we've ever had. We had kids from Crosstown High School in Memphis. We had kids from Warren County High School near McMinnville. We had Students Demand Action. We had a lot of granddads, a lot of grandmothers, a lot of young moms, children. And we are staying together. We are staying connected, and we're going to work together, hopefully, through the election season to get some people in who will give us the gun laws that we need.
Right. And Clemmie, you've been at this a long time, long before Covenant, long before, you've been out here. Talk about some of the grassroots. You said the legislative process is frustrating. It frustrates many of us. But Clemmie, tell me about your grassroots efforts, you being in the community, and also you have an annual event with mothers who have lost their children to gun violence.
Yes, I just feel the grassroots part has helped a lot, because I can go out to the streets and just talk about what's going to happen and what you're going to be involved with all these guns. And when I get knocks on my door with teenagers, 12 to 16 years old with guns, telling me that they don't want to do this kind of activity anymore, but I help them by taking the guns and then helping them get involved with other projects or other resources. But then that leads me to the household, the family household. So I get to go in the family household and talk to the grandmama and the mama that's 40 years old is the grandmother and the 20-year-old mother. Because this is what we're running into now, is because everybody's growing up together. And they don't know nothing about the legislation. They don't know nothing about bills. All they know is that I'm finna get a gun. I don't need no permit, and I can go shoot up some people. So for me to have these moms that I have, which I started out with 3, ended up with 15, then ended up with 25. Now I'm up to 45, and that's just in Nashville. Now I had to start a group in Memphis. I had to start a group in Muffinburg, and I don't really like it. I mean, I'm glad I got somewhere for them to vent and cry and break bread. But I don't really like adding more chairs. So now I'm trying to get them active enough to, like Linda said, we got to get out here and vote. We got to get out here and get some of these people out of here. So my annual for my mom over murder is really adding more mothers in from all over each state now. And try to see what we can do to be our own legislation and come up with our own bills now. And that's what I'm working with Raphael with now. We got to come up with some bills. Can't listen to them no more.
Okay. Now, last year we've had several webinars. We had one on the Second Amendment. We also had one that was talking about gun violence and the history of the YWCA. We had Joyce Searcy and Carol Busey. And this issue has been around for a very long time, and women have been trying to tackle this issue for some time. I want to ask each of you, why do you think that women, I know this is a very broad question, but looking in terms of women, why is it important for women specifically to be in this space? And I'll start with you, Claudia.
Well, we can remember how women got the right to vote, and I will be forever indebted to Harry Burns's mama for leaning some pressure on her son for being that vote to give women the right to vote, and really the whole country the right, as Tennessee did. Women look at things from a really unique perspective, and we have the ability to organize and network with each other and build communities across racial and socioeconomic borders that I think is a really unique and empowering perspective. We need everybody at the table. We need men to join this conversation. We need pastors and football coaches and athletes and industry executives. We need everybody to be at the table, but it continues to be no surprise that when you're up at the legislature, a lot of the faces that you see are women, because we recognize and want to protect our children. We want to protect our families and do everything that we can to advance this. So continuing to encourage our husbands and fathers and uncles and every member of our community to reach out to their legislators, because the legislature is predominantly white men and they need to hear from their peers. So with Voices for a Safer Tennessee, that's an effort that we are making to expand our coalition to bring in more male voices. I know that that's been a priority for a lot of organizations, but we'll get back into Beyonce, who runs the world? Girls.
And it's very true. At the YW, our largest programming, domestic violence services. And a few years ago, we decided we needed to bring men into that conversation because we were fighting a good fight and we're still taking the lead. It's just that we do need allies. And it's very important to have those allies. But as leaders, Linda, why is it important for women to be in this space?
I'm not sure that I think it's really a human being thing. I think we need human beings in this space. I think you have to have empathy, and women tend to have better developed empathy. You have to look at a situation like Clemmie's or Sandy Hook or Uvalde or the Waffle House and just start to feel what those folks feel. And of course, we can't feel it all, but some of us feel it pretty extensively. And I think we have to have imagination to recognize that we do not have to live like this. The way we are now, the situation we find ourselves in with reference to guns in Tennessee was brought to us by the supermajority over the last 12 years. They did this, and now look where we are. And I have imagination, and I know many of our moms do, and I know Clemmie does, and I think Claudia does too, that we could live in a better world. Things have been better in the past, and we could live in a safer world. We could live in a world with less racism. We could live in a world where money was distributed so that everybody had at least their basic needs met. That's not crazy, but it does take imagination. And many men have this skill, and many men are empathic. And so are most of us women.
I agree. And Clemmie, I'm going to go a little deeper with you because this is an issue that you and I have both felt, because I've known your work, I've known your body of work, and you have a national presence. Tell me some of the things you're seeing when you go about your work on a national basis.
Women's are nurturers. We are soccer moms. We are protectors. We are overseers. And I have no due respect to men because I saw Timothy Hodge on here. What's up? When I named my organization Mothers Over Murder, that's what I meant. Is the mother's going to have to take over this murder, because men they didn't carry their baby for 9 months. Let me just say. So they're not going to have the feeling that we have. Women's are more determined. When I went to New Orleans, I went to New Orleans to help with sex trafficking. I had no idea that I was going to get involved with an organization down there called Healing Hands, and it was for moms who have lost their kids there. When they took me to St. Louis, I went to St. Louis. Everywhere I went was for sex trafficking, and I ended up organizing a Stop the Violence program. And everybody that was in each one of those states that I've been to, even in Washington, I just come back, is all women. So I always say, not only are we soccer mom, we're sorority people. We come together, we think better. And if we can go and let 12 white men tell us when we can take a birth control pill and do an abortion, we're in trouble. So don't get me started. I mean, I know you're asking me else, but that's a part two. That's the part two. Women's, I just feel like I'm gonna do 1,000 women's in purple. I don't want no million. God told me do 1,000, and I want them from everywhere. I'm going back to Trayvon Martin mother. I want them all in one bunch together, and I'm gonna be able to show why women's gonna have to step up to the plate and vote these men's out.
All right. And I love this panel. There's a purpose for this panel. We're getting very, very different perspectives, but coming together, and all of us, and learning from each other. And this is important. It's important for each person to step into this space with their strengths in order to make change. All right, I'll go back to you, Claudia. Let's say you could wave a magic wand, and what would you do to end gun violence in our community? If you could get your greatest wish, what would be the magic wand?
I think our country would start working on this issue, taking away the political lens and recognizing this for what it is, which is a public health crisis.
Yeah.
And I think that we would look at it and come at it from not just the firearm safety policy, of which significantly more is needed and more robust legislation should be passed, but also coordinating with the gun manufacturers for figuring out ways to make the firearms more biometric and less, easily accessed by people that should not have them. We would be looking at it from a mental health perspective. We just recently met with a children's hospital in East Tennessee, and they said that the number of teenagers that they are seeing coming at it in a suicide and crisis moment has just gone through the roof. I think that we will look at this from a holistic perspective, because suicides and homicides, you know, it used to be that homicides were up here and suicides were up here, and now they are meeting. And you meet more and more people who are directly impacted by suicide by firearm, and that is across races, across socioeconomic boundaries. That affects every single community, and we need to be looking at ways that we can give our young people and, you know, older folks the mental health resources that they need for, you know, that to not feel like their last and final, you know, option. So I think if I had a wand, we would really look at it from a public health crisis, and not in a, you know, Democrat versus Republican versus independent type situation, but, you know, as something that is the #1 killer of children in Tennessee, and that is not acceptable.
You brought up a very important point, because often we're looking because of covenant at another party harming you with a gun, but self-harm is just as significant. And I said that sometimes we focus on the motive, and motive may be important in a certain sense, but the means, so you can have all the motive in the world, but unless you have the means, which is that tool, the gun, then you can't move forward. But the suicides, the accidents that happen with guns, and all those things go into the mixture. And this is killing our kids. This is really killing our kids, and I cannot overemphasize that. All right, Linda, let's go on.
Aaron, can I just add to your
Sure.
point? We are in the top 3 states for accidental shootings by children. It continues to be the number of news stories that you see where a sibling came across an unsecured firearm and caused irreparable harm to another friend or family member. Those are the stories that can really break your heart, because they are so preventable if that firearm had just been properly secured. So we have to continue to raise awareness about this. And for gun owners, responsible gun ownership is something that we need to continue to impress upon people. Just as much as your right to bear the arms is your need to store them securely and be responsible gun owners.
Yes, and we have to look at that, because, you know, that is a bad statistic for the state. And I think we have a lot of wonderful statistics for the state, but that is something that we have to address and we have to live with. And there are consequences to not taking care of this. And Linda, your magic wand.
Yeah, coming off of what Claudia said, we are 3rd in the nation for unintentional child shootings. And at this point, there is no penalty to an adult whose child accesses a gun and fires it. None, except, you know, emotional distress. That's not enough, I'm afraid. My magic wand, I would really tax the wealthy so that we can free up the billions and billions of dollars that we need to put back into our communities, like where Clemmie lives, because we have neglected those communities for hundreds of years, and we owe them a lot, because the wealth that we white people enjoy was built on their backs and because of their labor, and we have not made that right. And that's part of why there's so much shooting, because there aren't the jobs, there aren't family supports, there aren't after-school programs. Kids are not getting what they're needing. So they do go to gangs, because gang is family, gang is belonging, and gang is guns. And none of that's going to change until we lift up those communities. I don't see it. What do you think, Clemmie?
Well, I'll go to Clemmie, because Clemmie has firsthand knowledge about organization, The Village. And the whole idea behind The Village, it started under the last governor's administration. The idea was to cure violence in the community, a grand mission that, you know, we only touched the surface of. But what it did was empower grassroots organizations to do some of the things you speak about, Linda, to give some of the enrichment to the children specifically in the communities so that they have options other than gangs, and gangs are family. And if you've ever been in the communities, you understand why children will gravitate toward gangs, because it is family and comfort. So Clemmie?
No, I mean, she touched on everything. My biggest thing is, you coming in with economics is the problem in the low income areas in every neighborhood. You could give me $5,000-$10,000 and then tell me stop the violence. What can I do with $10,000? You give me $50,000 to $1.5 million, and I show you how to reduce the violence. There's nothing else to talk about.
Yes, very much so. And the idea behind this was that if you give alternatives, we had specific zip codes in the city, and it was designed for these grassroots organizations who were already doing the work to give them something to help out to somehow cure this violence that we do see. And it's in more than just the community that Clemmie is working in. All right. Last question, and then we're going to also ask anyone if they have anything we haven't touched upon. What would you say is the most important thing for this audience to take away? What will be your call to action? And that can come in any different forms, because sometimes individuals leave here, they say, oh, we've heard the issue, we're excited. We see that Clemmie's lost a child. We don't want that to happen. We see the legislation has stalled, although there is some hope. And each person has to address this within the way that they see they can best serve the community. That could be volunteering. That could be, going to the legislature for educational purposes. And that could be, deciding they want to run for office. And we have some phenomenal candidates and people that are running for office that could use our support. We're bipartisan at the YWCA, so it's important for each individual to look at the candidates and make their own personal decisions. So Claudia, what is your call to action for the community?
Well, I would probably not be a very good panelist if I just said ditto to everything you just said, but you really laid out so many of the things that are such a priority: voting, getting involved in elections, showing up at the legislature. I would add having conversations with your friends, neighbors, faith communities about this issue. You will be surprised at how many people just don't know a lot of the statistics that have been shared today. And sharing that information is important. I will give a plug to Linda and her team in the Be Smart area. One of the things that I have started doing since entering the space, I'll admit I didn't do before, was when my children are going for a play date, I ask the people whose house they're going to, do you own firearms? And if so, how do you store them? Not in a judgmental way, but in a way that says, I want to make sure that my kid doesn't come across a firearm. And if he does, I've had a conversation with him about what to do. So I think that there are steps that you can take. I know that I can certainly link in the chat the Our Take Action page. Other organizations have great ways to be involved, but just continuing to have conversations with people who might not be as informed about why this is such an important issue in Tennessee, and bringing them into the fold so they can use their voice to make change.
One point you brought up was so important. Know the people that your children are around and whether or not they have, firearms and what they do with them. And have a very respectful conversation, because that's real. And many children are killed just simply because a friend or older brother, older sister, or someone just happens to be around a firearm. That's very, very important advice. All right, Linda.
I've got a couple of thoughts. I think it would be really terrific if we all made friends with somebody who didn't look like us, because we're all in our silos. I've got moms who used to be afraid to drive over to a mom's meeting in North Nashville, and they survived. And we all just live in our little bubbles, and it's not working. It doesn't help. I'd also like to encourage everyone to vote, please, for people with gun sense. As the elections get closer, you can go to our website, gunsensevoter.org, put in your address, and you will see who is going to be on your ballot who has gun sense. That means they will govern with gun safety in mind. Right now, candidates are applying for a special status. It's called the gun sense distinction, and that's who will show up on that website as the election gets closer. Safe storage for sure. If you own a gun, you must be in control of it all the time. There's no exceptions. You've got to store that gun separate from ammunition, safety on, so that nobody can get a hold of it. It's just not negotiable. And if you'd like to join moms, our website is momsdemandaction.org. We'd love to have you.
Right, and I know many links for all the organizations have been put in the chat, and also to make sure that they understand all these organizations can only thrive if they do receive adequate funding. So if someone has touched your heart, or you see an organization you're interested in participating in, I said you can give them time, you give them money, you can give them both. All right, Clemmie, what do you want the takeaway to be?
Well, I mean, to me, it's just pretty much simple as what Linda said. Everybody need to quit being a pick and a click in their own way and in their own game. We need to quit being racism among ourselves. I never got the help that I really thought I felt that I should have gotten from anybody, not just white people, Black people. Everybody wants to start from the top and come down, and that's why ain't nothing happening. Everybody that know me know that I got everything that everybody else got in my organization, from a CPA all the way to everything else. But nobody has came here to even try to help us get to the point where we need to be. Everybody always want to look at a small link organization comparing to a corporate organization, and the corporate organization ain't doing too much because we still ain't got nowhere. When a small link organization like mine that's doing a whole impact out here, but you won't come here. Like Linda said, you're scared to come over this way. Well, hell, I'm scared to go to Brentwood. I keep getting pulled over, looking suspicious. So what's the difference? So I'm thinking that it's time for all of us to start coming together and see who all we can help climb that ladder, because climbing up here the legislation all the time is not working. And before you know it, everybody finna be 60, 70, and 80, and the people still ain't finna pass the hammer. So being out here in the community, helping look organizations like mine, I'm throwing a hint in. I'm not advertising for nobody else but Nashville Peacemakers. Come here. Whatever we don't know, then show us what we don't know. Just help us climb the ladder with you. Don't tell me to come to your stuff and you ain't showing me how to get my stuff. That's got to stop.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we've heard that. Get involved at whatever level you can. Go to the legislature and just sit there and listen. I've always thought that could be the greatest educational lesson, especially for young people, to actually see it in person, see what's going on. Vote. That's always important, and the YW advocates for everyone to vote. I know there's a lot of apathy and feels that, well, what difference does it make? But look at the difference that it makes when you don't vote. So it's very important for everyone to vote. There are ways you can look at candidates if this is your issue. Linda has given you a way that you can go on to, I guess, your website, Linda, to gauge candidates that are in line. And believe you me, those who are on the other side of this issue, who don't want any sort of gun reform, they do track individuals in their voting records to determine whether or not there are people they want to vote for. So you need to be that person too, if indeed you have an issue with the level of gun violence we're seeing in our community. And also to have it across the board to support all people that are in this fight for justice. It really is going to the heart of the YW's mission. We want to eliminate racism, empower women, promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all people. And it is a very undignified society that allows for children to die for gun violence. Adults too, but our children deserve better, and they don't often have the control that we have. I very much appreciate this panel. Is there any last parting words that any of you would like to say to the group? We have people here that we have given some level of knowledge and tools that they can take away into their communities. As Claudia said, sit down with your friends and family members and talk to them about these issues, because now you have some data. You know that there's some slight movement legislatively. Sometimes in the legislature, you have to pay defense as well as offense, and defense is just keeping further bad things from happening. So don't ever think that that is not a win, because it is. You can look at some of the legislation that's been proposed. Sometimes things fail the first time they come around. Let them come around the second time. Let them come around the third time. Let them come around the fourth time. It's the process. And having done that process for quite some time and knowing how you tinker, to finally there, something is passed. And so it takes a very long time, and it is a long game that we are part of. So thank you very much for being part of this panel. I thank very much our sponsors. There are good people in our society that are very much into us having these types of conversations. So thank you so much to all of you. Keep up the good fight. Hopefully you'll have some advocates that are coming out of this conversation, because there are people in the community that care, and it's very important that we step up and step into this space. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.